Calvin T. Mann, leading EMIY, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. He has inspired us for years. Welcome to EMIY TV Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
Hey, welcome. What's up? How y'all doing? Let me look into the video. Yes, y'all. To the beach, y'all. It is Monday afternoon, 4 p.m. Put Your Family First podcast kicking off. One of the things that I'm most definitely shocked at about putting your family first is not everyone's agenda. It's not everyone's agenda. One thing for sure, we are a collection of individuals, but not a collection of family. I just want to put that out there because it's real. And it's real as real can get. Who said that? What you see is what you get. It's what you get. I tell you, what you see is what you get now, baby. And real, let's do real. What's the best thing yet? Okay, I cut that out. So, keeping it real this weekend, right? Again, why experiential learning is important. This is another topic that we'll have this conversation about learning. It's another solution. There'll be a lot of information out there, and thousands will catch up to it later. How about that? And how are you, Heather?
I am well, thank you.
Good. I see we're live. We got family, y'all, on Instagram. What's up, Instagram? How y'all doing? Again, Put Your Family First podcast, EMIY TV. We're sharing solutions. So solutions is the least, how do I put it, the least thing that is sought after. I don't know. A lot of people don't look for solutions until there's a gun up to, or they're in jail, or,
Until a crisis shows up.
In a crisis.
Okay.
Right. Right. So to get in this weekend, we took our mentoring program. To the Ark Adventure.
Ark Encounter.
Okay, Ark Adventure in Kentucky, Williamston, Kentucky. It's an actual full replica of Noah's Ark. I have never seen a wall with that many sponsors, and that every time I've been there, the wall of sponsors has always drew me in. And I say this because there is a difference of what it looks like when you want to accomplish something with just a different agenda. And I'm going to quote my man Eric Thomas when he says, sometimes you got to pick a new environment to get better in. Sometimes you just got to move. You got to let go and move to another location, environment, or another opportunity for your opportunity to come alive. That's a good book. You all should get it. You. It's a very powerful book. Just came out. And it's a lot of good information in it. A lot of good information. So, Heather.
Yes.
How are you?
I am excited about our Ark Adventure encounter, the families that were there, the boys that were present. And this really kind of prompted this conversation today that we're going to have about experiential learning. What that is, we use experiential learning trips. So we're going to kind of frame it around that, but we're also going to talk about what experiential learning is. And it's really a simple concept. Experiential learning, you can look at it in two ways. It is being intentional, first, about what you're doing and where you're going. And then secondly, it's really your ability to reflect on the experience. So creating questions that prompt it, and not yes or no questions. Because when you're talking to kids, and most adults too, if you ask a yes or no question, that's all you're going to get. So you may not get the reflective aspect of it that you might want to get from that conversation. You want it to be a conversation. because the life lessons are mixed up within that conversation. The wisdom, the insights, the experience, and how to gauge how it's really affecting people really is in that reflective conversation. So you want to make sure that you ask open-ended questions, and then you try to create this experience of some things that may be new, or some things that may be modified, or some things that may be the same, but you might want to get different results from it. So how you frame that experience is really, really very important. Being intentional about that experience is really very important. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I really want to talk about out of community, or start the conversation with out of community experiences. We're going to eventually get to that ARC encounter so you can see kind of what we're talking about. But out of community experiences really help us to establish life lessons. Like as a kid, in your family, in your neighborhood, what were the opportunities that you had to move outside of that? So in school, we call them field trips, right? And so when you were in school, that was actually an experiential learning trip. So you went to the zoo, you went to the library, you went to, you went to Cedar Point. Whatever your generation may answer that question better. But the opportunity is that it was not that fun wasn't important. Fun is definitely an element of that experiential learning. However, beyond the fun, what did you gain out of that? So you may have gained, if say Cedar Point, Calvin's family did a lot of Cedar Point trips when they were growing up. But when you think about Cedar Point, where were some of the things that you learned? Calvin, can you think about what Cedar Point was for you all growing up? I know you guys chartered buses to go, so
we had our own charter buses, but the Cedar Point was a trip of being able to go someplace where people couldn't go. It was an affordable trip. It was a trip where families could go, kids could go, have fun, get on a roller coaster, because the roller coaster on 7 Mile at Edgewater.
Wow, right? Blast from the past.
Right, those things weren't so exciting. There was no investment in Edgewater like that. So Edgewater eventually closed. But Cedar Point, it seemed like it was always an investment. Something was always happening. And so when you got there, you could get lost at Cedar Point, right? Which means you didn't necessarily need your parents. You can just get lost, go on all the rides. You know how to get back to the table. So it was just a family fun trip, and you learned different things.
So let's pull out the learning piece, because the experiential learning component of it, of looking at field trips and looking at going out, the purpose was, yes, to have fun, but what were the things that you gained as a result of it? So one key important thing that you mentioned, it was that you didn't really have to sit up under your parents. You kind of, depending on your age, you were given some freedom, some parameters to make decisions and choices about what was next for you, right?
Right.
So in making those choices and decisions, if you recall, because I was never really a roller coaster person, so that wouldn't be my experience. But maybe you were a roller coaster person. What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about other people? What did you learn about, you called it freedom. What did you learn about those things? So think about that.
So for me, What did I learn? I learned I can count on myself. I learned that I could navigate and get lost and find my way back. I learned how to be respectful to people, right? I knew how to ask questions. I didn't know something, I knew I could stop someone because I knew to use the words, excuse me. Can you tell me, excuse me, how do I, right? I also learned to read signs because it was important. Big signs, it was important for me to learn to read signs to really navigate the park, because the amusement park was huge in itself. So, you have to, then as I mastered that, I began to pick my little hiding spots where nobody could find me, because now I got the park mastered. And so because I had the park mastered, I could go places and sit and be there for a while and not even get on a ride and just watch people. So there were a lot of things that I learned in that process as a young broken boy. And when I say young broken boy, there was a lot of things that took place at Cedar Point as a young man of divorced parents. And so it was a lot. And for me, I learned to navigate. That's what it was. I can do anything. After the See the Point thing, it was on.
That's awesome. A couple of key things that you mentioned was one, being able to read, to be able to find your way, navigate based on the directions, because typically it would give you a statement or a location with an arrow, and that's as much detail as you're going to get. So you have to learn how to read signs. That's really important. And that's a really important outcome of that experience. Some of the other things was that there were multiple ethnicities in one place. It wasn't necessarily that it was segregated based on your ethnicity or your gender. Everybody was a melting pot and mixing into what was happening at that time. And so if you've never been around other cultures or other ethnicities like that, that was a huge experience. Hearing people speak different languages, if that's not the language that's spoken in your community or what you hear more frequently, those kinds of opportunities, the way people dress, how people work together or didn't work together, how to manage your money. If you had money to get refreshments, at some point, if you had $10 or $20 to spend, you had to be able to make that last the entire day. How did you learn to do that? What did you pick and choose to eat or didn't eat? Or what games did you play to win prizes? How you had to learn to play the game. All of those are opportunities that were learning opportunities. And because we don't really focus necessarily when we go into something like we're going to learn today. You may not go into it that way, but you definitely want to leave it that way. You want to leave with new experiences, new opportunities, new information, new tools.
Sure. But again, you have to get outside, right? Outside is a place that you have to go. Today, are you outside? I mean, where are your children? I mean, and then where are you? Right? Back in the day, they used to sit on the porch, watch us play. They wasn't sitting on the porch getting blowed. They sit on the porch, watch us play to make sure that we were doing things and doing things the right way, making sure respectfully. Mm-hmm. I can't think of not one. There's never been a time my mother liked Johnny Walker Red. Only during Christmas and New Year's would she ever drink. It's an eggnog. That's it. I can't think of a time my mom sat on the porch while we were outside playing and she decided to drink. I can't think of a time going over my dad's house and him not watching me in the backyard, paying attention to what was going on with me, trying to show me how to hold a football, trying to play catch with a baseball. Like, no one ever asked, right, us how these things impact us. But the other part that is absolutely tough in today's environment is too many parents giving their kids the choice to make an adult choice when it is adults' responsibility to make the choice for the kid, so the kid learns from the adult choice. The kid can't learn from the adult choice if the adult is allowing the kid to make the adult choice. When the kid makes the adult choice, you're teaching your kids to sit. 80%, they had an 80% uptick in truancy and DPS. It's the highest in the nation. So a DPS education, right? A kid getting a DPS education with an 80% truancy on his back is always going to be double evaluated in his education, because you are preparing the kids to be absent. A kid can't go to a job, be on the job, learn on the job, and they're only there for 2 weeks. After they get the check, then they quit. These are habits that are taught by truancy. Truancy creates these things. So going to learn something and being consistent at it, truancy is going to affect the exploratory learning environment, because the kid has a choice. When a kid doesn't have a choice, then the kid is open to learning. The parent made the choice for you. When you allow kids to make choices, they're always going to make the easy choice, and therefore learning is going to be in jeopardy.
And that's a great point, Calvin. Another piece to that to consider is that those decisions have to be age appropriate. And I think that's also where we as parents kind of missed a step. We let kids decide what they want to do every day. If you want to stay in the house or don't want to go outside, we let them choose that. We didn't have a choice growing up. It wasn't a choice. You had a choice in what you did when you went outside, but you didn't have a choice whether you were going outside or not. You couldn't sit in the house all day. That was not permitted in our house. And you couldn't go outside and you couldn't do anything else until you finished your homework. All of those things had to be done before. It's almost like before your life began. So you have a school life, you come home, it's home life, you check in, you do your homework, you might have a snack, and then you're out. And you're out until dinner. Most of the time you're out until dinner, you get called back in. And if you miss that, then that means you're out until the street lights come on. And if you are not home, that means trouble. And that was up until I'm too old to say, but at least up until I was 17. I had to be somewhere. You had to be able to account for where you are, and your family had to know. And so if you weren't in some activity or involved in something positive, you were where your family could see you. And typically that was outside. So I think that's an important part that you brought up, Calvin, that part of decision making. Again, parents, we have to let our kids have choices, but it must be age specific, age appropriate. The types of video games that kids are playing now that are choosing, and parents may not know the type of content in those video games. They're programming. Your pastime is learning how to shoot people and run people over with fast cars and, all of these video games. I'm not saying all of them are violent in nature, but the ones that are, what's the one about stealing cars? I can't think of the name of it. Sorry. I can't think of the name of it. Maybe I pushed it out of my mind on purpose. And this is not about judgment. This judgment meaning good, bad, right, or wrong. What this is about is helping our kids make good decisions and being an example and a gateway for those decisions to be made. We are the gateway. And if we're not teaching our kids even the difference, and I know, sometimes you want to give your kids a sense of space or freedom, or you want them to be at peace so that you can be at peace. And we, allow them to have that video game time. It sometimes goes too far. We have to be able to distinguish what's appropriate for our kids too. Not just kids in general, but our kids. Who knows it best? So if you know your kid is impressionable and you have a gun in the house, why would you have games that teach you how to shoot people? I mean, we've had enough examples of 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds with guns in their hands. What were they doing before that? What have they been exposed to as well?
Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
I was just about to say too.
Thank you. What are you teach? Why would you have a game, even by the name of that, in your home? As a parent, that those who do play video games, why would that be one of the games that you allow your children to play?
I want this, Mom.
But I'm also talking about our adults, our parents, the mothers and the fathers playing those violent video games
with
too.
Them, right? But there's no substitute for an immature mind. So the parents could very well have an immature mind. The parents have it's no big deal, as they would say to them. But you grown. You missed that whole thing as a child. So now here you grown and you want to play it. You got all your basics lined up. Right from wrong, respect, all that. But here come your little son, right? And this is what you give them.
And they think it's
right. And then they don't have no social skills. So what happens? I have no social skills. I don't know how to deal with bullies. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to fight. You've taught me nothing. And even if I go to school and I fight every day, you still have taught me nothing because I'm fighting because I can't read, can't do certain things. There are certain things I can't do. I'm not attractive. The girls don't like me. I'm dealing with all of these things, puberty, everything. You've not taught me anything. You've just handed me this video game. And the video game gets into the mind and it gives you, because what is the number one thing that we have as males? If there's a problem, what are we naturally going to do? Solve it. Right? So I tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. The thing that blows my mind about mass shooting and drive-by shootings is there is no thought whatsoever about anybody else being hit. It's just, this is what I'm going to do. The other thing that is mind-blowing about this conversation that we have totally getting away from, the repetition of words. The repetition of words and understanding what that is and getting into a child's spirit and how. The repetition of the words. You got to go here to kill this. You got to go here to kill that. So you're training. It's like they know this. You can't tell me you don't know this. It's $1 billion industry. You can't tell me. Video game violence is through the roof. Dudes are literally killing family members over video gaming, over their phones, electronics. So you got a big issue. But to learn properly is on the parents.
Thank you for that, Kelvin. And so remember that our podcast really is about helping us to find solutions. So how do we resolve some of those things? The first step is to be aware. So increasing the awareness of the things that are really happening, and some of the prompting behind those actions, those thoughts. So we have to be able to guard our thoughts. We have to be able to guard our words, and we have to be able to guard our actions. And so these are behaviors that are taught. And so we have to be mindful that experiential learning is about teaching. It's about where you're going and what you're doing, and then being able to reflect on it so that you know what you're trying to gain out of that experience, or what there is to gain out of that experience can be verbalized so you understand where a person is. And so we use this technique for a couple of reasons. We also use it, and it can be used by family, and it should, to help with bonding. So if you go somewhere with a friend or you partner with somebody you don't know, let's just use the example of going to Cedar Point. When you had to go, maybe you had to be assigned a buddy. Maybe that was somebody you knew. Maybe it was somebody you didn't know. However, or a group, you had a chance to get to know new people. So it also forms a sense of bonding when you go into new adventures together as a partner or a group, as a family. Even as the school itself, there's a common ground that we all have, a sense of belonging that we all need. And as we continue to develop and be exposed to those things, you start to gravitate. So, if it's in your family and you're going to a different place, then you're going to stick with your family. If it's your school and you're going into a new place, you're more likely to stick with members of your school. If you're going to a new city, you're more likely to stick with those people who are from the city that you belong. There's common ground. That common ground is so key to how we live and experience life. And so being able to have the freedom and the sense of exploration to be able to expand that is really important. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we use experiential learning and EMIY and some of the ways that we've used it over the last few years. So one of my favorite learning, I'm going to call it a learning trip, was when we took our boys to Michigan State to the Midnight Madness game. That was so amazing. And what made it so amazing, so we have a lot of boys who are interested in, professional basketball, professional football, but to be able to be on Michigan State's basketball court, to be able to talk to the head coach, to be able to talk to and be around the players and go into the locker room and see what happens behind the scenes was amazing. It was amazing. And to be able for them to talk to the players, actually touch them. They were putting their hands on the shoulders. It was people that they could recognize, faces that were familiar to them. And being in that environment was, that was just one of my favorite trips. Calvin, did you have anything about that Midnight Madness trip?
No, because we've been doing it for years. My favorite goes back to when we took them to Michigan State and they had the whole campus experience. Mm-hmm. So they were able to go into some classrooms. They were able to go through the cafeteria, eat well. Then they were able to go in and see a full basketball practice. So they were able to witness what a collegiate basketball practice looked like. And talk and sit in the space and look around and really get the experience of what it was. Go in and they took pictures. They sat on the floor. It was such a huge event to them that it inspired out of that group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those guys are collegiate athletes.
Blessings. Absolutely.
One just graduated who, he got, I don't even want to go into it, but he just graduated from Iowa. Who wasn't, anyway. Mm-hmm. Then, another one is at running track. Another one went to junior college. One still has yet to graduate. He graduates this year. Wow, to see that picture in my head. One is at the University of Michigan. Another one is at the University of Kentucky. One went to Western Michigan University. I think that's about it.
Well, okay. So here are a couple of other experiential learning trips that we've taken. We went to the Thomas Edison Museum in Port Huron. That was another exciting adventure. Yes. Because if you don't know about the Thomas Edison Museum, it's kind of right next to the Blue Water Bridge that is in Port Huron. But bigger than that, it is the story of Thomas Edison as a boy. All of the things that he did just as a boy. I want to say from a young age, maybe 5 years old, up to kind of a teenager, and how enterprising he was. But it's all the stories and the steps that you can see any boy that you know taking those kind of steps with the right guidance. He had his mother as his advocate. It wasn't that he didn't have his father in his life, but his mother was really his advocate in education. She was the one that continued to push him. His father also did, but his growth and his opportunity of what he needed to be who he wanted to be. He actually went after the things that he wanted. He got a chance to experiment and explore and be an entrepreneur at a young age. Selling newspapers, being delivering papers on the trains, riding the trains from city to city, selling newspapers. I mean, just the thought of some of the things that he went through at his age leaves so much encouragement for what our boys can become. And I thought that was really a great trip. So if you haven't been there, it's an easy trip. It's about a 45-minute ride, 45-minute ride. Mm-hmm. It's a modest admissions fee, like maybe $12, $13. It's right on the river, so you can make a day of it. Just be careful to check the days and times if you're going as a group, as a family, to get those discounts as well. You can see some things online, but it's nothing like being there. What was your thought about the Thomas Edison Museum?
Well, the Thomas Edison Museum, in my opinion, was one of the most impactful because you were able to see exactly what many kids would be up against if they were Thomas Edison today. A kid of that magnitude being able to do the things that they do, they would put, even back then, educationally, they was throwing him away. And so because he had the staunch parenting, He was able to be creative. He was able to get on the train. He had a different type of freedom, so to speak, to be able to do a newspaper, be creative at doing a newspaper and selling a newspaper on the train. His story in itself was amazing across the board because what happened was it just inspired so many people.
Yes, and this final thing about it, I am a firm believer that when we create the environments for our boys to be innovative and creative and to explore, this is what comes out of them. They create new products, they have a new life, but we have to condition them to be that. That means that we have to offer them a sense of safety. We have to offer them some creative outlets, some new tools to be and become not just what they see every day, but to advance beyond what they see every day. I think that's an important opportunity. And we have within our collective ability to do that. That's why I'm excited about our innovation labs. Okay, and so the other trips that we have taken, the next one I want to talk about is the African American Museum, the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., which was another experiential learning trip that we took with our boys. Another amazing opportunity because within that trip, there was so much to learn and so much to do. So, Calvin, you want to talk about your favorite parts of that trip?
So Washington, D.C. was different. We had, that group was locked in. They were very focused through that whole session. That was one of our best sessions of mentoring. They were able to do the things that you did, that were required, basically. And for me, I gotta say, it was just, it was a great trip. How they showed up, their jackets, how they presented themselves, the whole nine. Great group of kids.
So some of the experiences that they had, for many, it was the first time they had been out of the city or out of their communities. It was the first time for some to have gone on an airplane because we actually flew that time. It was a first for a lot of people. The first time they were away from their parents for days at a time, as opposed to just an overnight trip with their friends. It was their first time picking their own dinner menu. They didn't have real restrictions on what they wanted to select as their dinner. They made good choices about their dinner, about what they liked and didn't like. They made good choices about being in a room, sharing space with other people, about what that means in terms of hygiene and courtesy and how you kind of share a space with someone. You get that if you have brothers and sisters, you have that, but typically, you don't do that with strangers. And I don't mean strangers as in unknown, but unknown habits outside of the program. So you got to have time like that with the mentors. You got to see them and with their hair down as well, because the mentors were in the rooms with the boys as well. So being able to engage with them in other ways besides just being coaches to them, but actually being that father figure that was there present with them, helping them, coaching them through hygiene, coaching them through waking up at a certain time, all of those things that are important that boys need to see. They need to see our men in different environments, making different decisions and things like that. So I thought that trip was really important. A lot of, like I said, a lot of firsts for people, and then the conversations and the reflections that took place at that time about all these different areas, all of these different opportunities. They rode some people have never been on the subway before. They had that experience, and then I'm going to shift over to the next part of that trip, which was to Baltimore, Maryland, to the Blacks in Wax Museum. Which, Calvin, you want to share a little bit about that?
That was a hard take for them. After coming out of, right, it was a hard take for them now to walk into the museum.
The Blacks in Wax Museum.
Yeah, in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
But they got a great trip, right? They got a great lesson on how to handle certain things. Here's what happened. we take the kids to go to Chipotle. So the mentors and everything, they go into Chipotle. Inside of Chipotle, I tell my son, come get me when it's time to pay the bill. My son comes out, gets me to pay the bill. I come in, we walk through the door, we get inside. My son goes back to a spot where he communicated he was going to get his dad to pay the bill. The guy, about 3-4 people behind, decided to make one of the moves.
A customer, right?
A customer, right? Mm-hmm. So he cussing people out. Hey, what y'all? No, ain't nothing. I got to get to work, so and so and so and so. I say, brother, I just, come in here to pay for the kids. Lunch, my mentee's lunch. We getting right out the way. That's all he went and got me for. I'm not even getting in line. And he said, F them kids. I don't give a, right? So I said, whoa. So now the kids are watching. So my son, right? He 18. He got his daddy in him. He not scared. He want to keep talking. I say, I had to tell him, don't say another word. Be quiet. Right? So we got the kids. The kids are watching. The mentors are watching. The whole Chipotle is on lock. I said, let this man go to work. I don't need to see another brother lose his job for being late. Will y'all please let this man go ahead? So it's an ATF agent in the back, guns all over his body, right? So the ATF agent's like, come on, bro. This ain't the time to pull that. Everybody ready to eat. I say, no. Let this brother get to work, please. So they move out the way. Yeah, so-and-so. He studied talking. I say, hey, brother, I move closer to him. I don't back away. I move closer to him because I know the rules of engagement. I know if I got to do something, I'm going to have to do it quick. So I move closer. So I'm telling everybody, relax. Brother, get your lunch. He studied talking. I say, brother, you're already getting your lunch. Now I'm directly behind him, right? So now I'm directly behind him. I say, everybody he took cuts in front of, right? I'm paying for your lunch. Really? Yep. Everybody. So now he looking. No. You got to get to work. You know what I mean? You got to get to work. So now he get his food. He studied talking. Then I said, as he walking out the door, I said, let it be a lesson. When you hear a demon say he don't care about kids, let him go. And he turned around. I said, hey, brother, you got to get to work. You need to get to work. Right? And so the little Asian lady, she was all nervous. I said, no, wasn't nothing going to go down. And the ATF guy was like, brother, I was like, here's my card, brother. Lunch on me. Hey, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? But the kids saw how you handle things. How you handling things, you don't always have to have a physical altercation. So as we're leaving the Chipotle and we're getting in, we leave this incident right here on the inside of the Chipotle. We're not even talking about it. Let's go. And they got that lesson. So it's just another opportunity to teach.
I do want to mention, just step back a little bit, if you've been to the African American at Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., there's a lot to see. There's a lot to see and there's a lot to do. And so your sensory organs are going bananas with the sights, the sounds. There's lots to read. And again, reading coming up in this experiential learning process. And every place that we've gone to, it required you to read. It required you to read. And so, and making sure that you're encouraging the reading process just to be able to navigate the whole Cedar Point trip, to navigate the Michigan State trip, to navigate. If you've ever been on that campus, you ever been in that stadium, that gymnasium, it's huge. And the only way you find your way from your seat is to read and to find your way. And so those things are really important. So reading, as we say, reading is life. And in order to navigate life, you have to be able to read. And so we're making sure that that is a built-in component of what we do every day. So don't forget to do that at home as well. Reading recipes, reading the back of the boxes, reading directions, reading. We have to continue to enforce that. Even reading the temperature on your stove, read, just to keep that in mind. Okay, so one of the next trips that we had, it was the Blacks and Wax. One of the reasons why that particular venue was important was because it had generations of historic figures, but it also had generations of people who made the difference. It had one that stood out for me that had the wax figures. So these are life-size wax figures. And one was an electrician, and they showed him standing up on a light pole like you would connect, how the linemen connect the electricity from pole to pole. That was one of the inventions and the first Black man to have done those kinds of things. And so it was the first in a lot of areas. It was those who have created technology, innovations, and made history. And so being able to see that in multiple ways up until President Obama was actually one of the wax figures in there as well. I mean, historic figures. Hannibal was, I think, at the front door. It was a big replica of a big elephant. So that story, but being able to understand your history in the midst of that. The other part that they took in, I particularly wouldn't go into this. They had a lynching exhibit, and when I had cautioned the boys about going into that particular exhibit, but they wanted to see for themselves, and they went into that exhibit and they came out with so many questions. And I don't understand why would another person do this to another person? I mean, it shook them up in a way, and it gave them questions that it quieted them for a moment, but then they started to ask questions about their history, about their culture. Why were certain things done? And of course, they had, the segregation. They had segregation exhibits there as well. And so for them, it's like if all the history that they had seen during the course of that day, during the course of that weekend, for those questions to be raised, change them by asking the questions, by having the experiences, because they had no idea. They had no idea what our ancestors had been through. And so, and the responsibilities that they have now to themselves and to their future. So I really appreciate the conversations and the questions that they asked then. So that kind of leads us into this last Ark Encounter trip. And so, Calvin, you want to share some of the insights from the Ark Encounter?
Nope.
Well, one, it was a opportunity for us to be in some combined spaces together. So the 5-hour trip there, the 5-hour trip back, and the engagement during the course of the trip. So a lot of it was a lot of walking. There was a lot of reading to do. Each exhibit had had lots of reading to explain what was happening during that time, to explain what certain things meant. And I believe it was reading overload for a lot of the boys. I think they probably read more in that one day probably than they had in maybe a few weeks. But understanding how important it was, I think they started to see that, how to get from one place to the other, how to find the exits, how to find the restrooms, all of those things had to do with reading. And so not only the exhibits, some were, some had, where it was spoken, or it was the animatronic people moving around, but otherwise keeping in perspective the size and scope of the work, the campus itself, and then the size and the scope of the actual Ark. It is a sight to see. Even in the distance, when you see this structure, it's a massive structure. And to know that it comes with stories, it comes with a sense of your belief system, those questions to help you ask those questions. There's lots of spaces in that space to help you or to prompt questions about what you believe and those kinds of things, which I thought that was even more important of a trip, to have them just to start to think about what they believe. What's the belief system of your family? I thought that was a really good opportunity to kind of breach those conversations, and both as an organization and some of the parents were there, as well as some of our team members. So having people to have those conversations with, and some of those conversations were had on the trip back, and then some other things happened on the way back, especially when you have boys in that closed space. Learned a lot about video games, though.
Right. Well, you got to understand, again, you're talking the feeble, the small, the immature mind, the young mind, not a lot of exposure and too much exposure to one thing. And so that's a whole nother conversation. But to make it clear, the trip most definitely, is lasting, right? It's having an effect. Just received a text message from one of the parents. And that's what exposure does. And what happens is that, again, sometimes we see things the wrong way, right? Sometimes we don't, because of the struggle or the carrying of the mantra of the struggle that you are up against. It's this environment. It can be heavy, and you not understand how to navigate yourself through this. It's very, very difficult to be a black male in this country. And it's very difficult to be a black female in this country. It's very difficult to be black in this country, considering the number of attacks that you are constantly enduring and under. So you handle that, dear.
So I know we're coming close on time, so I want to throw some things out to talk about how we as family can create those same experiential learning opportunities. So some families travel, maybe you fly, maybe you have road trips, all of those wonderful ways to have experiential learning. The opportunity is to engage in conversation, engage in reflection, engage in that learning. It is what you're doing and where you're going that also creates that experiential learning. So I want to talk about a couple of things that we can do as families in our own household. So these are some of the places that you can go and how we're going to talk about how to do that learning piece as a result of that. You can have a day at the park. Michigan has so many beautiful parks that are just waiting to be explored. For those of you who do know or don't know, we have bears in Michigan. We have black bears in Michigan. So the further you go north, the more your environment changes. But there are state parks that you can visit that is just a new learning opportunity. There are state parks just about, you could go probably every 25, 30 miles and run into a state park. So it's important that pull out the map of the state, do a search on state parks and kind of what kinds of things they offer at that park. And when we talk about family reunions is a great time for that sense of exploration. Either coming together, exploring your history, talking about games and activities, but also learning about your family has so much importance when we're talking about our family reunions and what they really mean. The generations before, the present generations, really getting to know each other. That's a part of that experiential learning opportunity. Block club parties, that used to be so much fun growing up. Some communities still do block club parties. which is, when you block off the streets and you kind of celebrate your barbecue, you have games and things like that. A lot of people have moved to like the trunk or treats. That's still a great way to celebrate. Great ways to experiment and explore. That means getting to know the people who are there. Reading is another, and especially when we do it together, reading is another way that we can have an experiential learning activity. You can go anywhere in books. There are lots of places to visit in your imagination. There are lots of places to anticipate visiting when you read a book or read a story. It just brings things to life. The cultural festivals that we have access to. Don't limit the experience to your own culture. Investigate or explore other cultures. Because at the festivals, they talk about clothes and food and their traditions. That's really important. Explore other museums. The Arab American Museum in Dearborn is an amazing space. There are lots of other cultural centers that open the doors to embrace other people to come in. Don't be afraid to take that step. Family nights. I think a time for the family, a designated time for your family to gather is another important time. Maybe you gather as a game. Maybe you're part of the family members that play cards. Whatever that opportunity is to gather together, to talk, to get to know each other, to share information, knowledge, and wisdom. It's another opportunity for experiential learning. Taking nature walks. We have a lot of bike trails. We have a lot of walking trails. There are a lot of things that are just in the Metro Detroit area, opportunities to do that. Having a family project. Maybe a family project is, putting a playground in the backyard or creating a garden. All of those different things to do. Setting up, creating a go-kart. That was one of my favorite things. But all the different things that you can do as a family. This is a great time to do it. Exploring your ecosystems. So what types of things, plants, flowers, animals, birds. I saw a really unique bird today. It was a yellow bird. When the wings were open, the bird was black and yellow. When they closed their wings, you only saw the yellow. And they were the same color as dandelions. I had never seen a bird that looked like that before. But that's new to my ecosystem. All of these new bugs and animals in our ecosystem. I saw a deer running down 7 Mile. A deer running down 7. It hasn't been the first time. Probably I've seen that 3 times in the last year. A deer running down 7 Mile. This is a change in our ecosystem. What drew those animals more into the city now than they had been before? Raccoons and squirrels and skunks in the city? That's crazy. Anyway, you could also visit the planetariums. You can visit the aquariums, visit the zoo. All of these opportunities, especially on Belle Isle, a lot of things going on now with the nature trails opening, with the Maritime Museum opening. All of those things are opportunities to explore and experience. But remember, part of this process is the questions and the reflection that happens after those events take place or during those events, because learning and growing is a part of that, a part of those questions, a part of that experience. So don't be afraid to step out and expose yourself and your children and your families to new exploration.
Just go for a walk. Get out the house, grab the kid, go for a walk. Don't be afraid to open up an old school encyclopedia. Take a journey that way. Don't be afraid to have a reading night where you're reading something and the whole family is participating in the reading. Don't be afraid to expose them to good, quality, wholesome information, right? And protect them from ignorance and foolishness. Do a better job ourselves of making sure that our children are protected in the knowledge that they gain and receive, and teaching them until they're of age to be able to make an understanding decision for their own life and what they choose to get involved in. Heather, that point is, you hit it home today. Tell everybody where they can reach you at.
You can reach me at my website, yourinspiredjourney.com, yourinspiredjourney.com, or you can reach me by phone at 313-759-7855, 313-759-7855.
Okay. And you can reach me at, look at this. Look at this. So you can reach me at EMIWorld.com.
Continue. Well, I just want to thank Monique again, our engineer, while Calvin is scrolling on the screen. I want to thank you again today for making this happen for us.
Oh, no problem.
Yes. And so you can reach me at EMIWorld.com for the boys. For the men, you can reach me at goodfathersonly.com. Speaking engagements and all, soon you will be able to reach me at calvintman.com. I am glad we had this moment. Thank you for stopping in and sharing this time and gathering your solutions here at Put Your Family First podcast. There will be some changes coming forward, and we hope you are ready to learn more. With that being said, remember, exposing your children to quality information, it is your job as a parent. Peace.